Fox 32 has investigated Henyard's use of a police security detail, taking officers off the street and costing thousands of dollars.
You could feel the anger tonight at a Board of Trustees meeting in Thornton Township. The board and citizens looking for accountability to their finances.
Ladies and gentlemen, brace yourselves for a shocking scandal shaking the small town of Dolton, Illinois. This isn't just another political debacle. At the center of this controversy lies corruption, intimidation, and a shocking accusation that could change everything. The focus of this turmoil is Mayor Tiffany Henyard, a woman who some claim has turned the town into her personal playground. Buckle up, because this story is filled with jaw-dropping twists and turns. It all began on July 14th, 2023, when former village trustee Jill Stubbs, an outspoken critic of Mayor Henyard, woke up to a terrifying sight. Her property had been targeted by gunfire, with at least 9 rounds fired into cars parked outside her home. Windows were shattered and the metal twisted. While this may sound like a random act of violence, Stubbs believes it was a deliberate act designed to intimidate her into silence. She claims the attack was orchestrated by Mayor Henyard herself, a clear message to silence one of her most vocal opponents. The question remains, was this a random incident, or was it a sinister attempt to quash dissent? But the shooting is just the beginning of a much larger story. Since taking office in 2021, Henyard's tenure has been mired in a string of scandals and allegations of financial misconduct. Some critics have gone so far as to label her America's worst mayor due to her controversial actions. Instead of focusing on the community's needs, Henyard attracted headlines for a much different reason: her lavish lifestyle, which she allegedly funded through misused public funds. From luxury vacations to extravagant meals, her critics argue that the mayor has been living a life of luxury at the expense of the town's taxpayers. Perhaps one of the most bizarre moments of Henyard's time in office came during a town hall meeting, where she, rather than discussing important issues, decided to host a DJ set and play R&B music for the attendees. This incident only fueled the growing perception that the mayor was more interested in indulging herself than fulfilling her responsibilities to the community. Critics have suggested that her actions reflect a deep disregard for her duties and a desire to live lavishly at the cost of Dolton's residents. The financial questions surrounding Henyard's administration are equally troubling. There have been numerous accusations that she used public funds to cover personal expenses, sparking further concerns about her ability to manage the town's finances responsibly. The details of her questionable spending practices continue to mount, making it clear that this is more than just a case of political mismanagement. It's a potential case of corruption, and then there's the darker side of the story: the very real possibility that Mayor Henyard resorted to violence to maintain control and intimidate her critics. As the investigation into the shooting continues, the question remains: did Henyard order the attack on Stubbs? While the evidence is still unclear, the growing list of scandals paints a troubling picture of a leader more interested in self-indulgence and maintaining power than serving the people of Dolton. With every new revelation, the residents of Dolton are left to wonder just how deep this web of corruption goes. Will the town ever recover from the chaos unleashed by its own mayor, or will Henyard's reign continue to spiral into further scandal? Only time will tell.
Relates to with credit cards. As you heard me speak today in my board meeting about, I do not handle that.
Some of those charges.
The story of Mayor Tiffany Henyard of Dolton, Illinois, has taken an even darker turn as more details emerge about her actions and leadership. While her extravagant spending and lavish lifestyle have long been a source of public concern, there's much more to Henyard's reign. Critics argue that she has transformed Dolton into her personal fiefdom, using political influence to intimidate and silence anyone who dares to challenge her power. At the top of her so-called hit list is former village trustee and retired Cook County Sheriff's Deputy Jill Stubbs. A vocal critic of the mayor, Stubbs has never held back in publicly calling out Henyard for her questionable actions, especially her handling of public funds and her controversial decisions. The tensions between the two reached a boiling point when Stubbs led an unsuccessful recall attempt to remove Henyard from office. Instead of backing down, Henyard grew even more infuriated by the challenge to her authority, escalating her efforts to undermine Stubbs. What began as professional disagreements quickly turned into personal attacks, with Henyard taking aim at Stubbs in increasingly bizarre and troubling ways. Stubbs has been a thorn in Henyard's side, regularly speaking out against the mayor's decisions, including the appointment of a registered sex offender to the role of village code enforcement officer. However, it was one particular incident that escalated their conflict to a whole new level. During a particularly harsh winter, Henyard showed up uninvited to Stubbs' home, seemingly with the intent to make a public spectacle for the cameras. The mayor was photographed shoveling stub snow, smiling broadly and acting as if this were some kind of benevolent gesture. Henyard even made a comment, "This is what it looks like when you pull up on your haters," which sounded more like something a reality TV star would say than a professional politician. Stubbs, bewildered by the mayor's antics, quickly confronted Henyard, making it clear that she hadn't asked for her help and found the whole display invasive rather than helpful. Stubbs went on to call it a deliberate attempt to taunt and embarrass her, and during a subsequent village board meeting, she didn't hold back in voicing her disdain. She stated that Henyard's snow shoveling stunt only worsened the situation and reinforced the idea that Henyard was more interested in drama and media attention than being a competent leader. For Stubbs and many others in Dolton, this bizarre episode epitomized Henyard's entire approach to leadership. Focus on self-promotion and theatrics rather than public service. This incident, along with the earlier financial scandals, painted a picture of a mayor more interested in maintaining power through intimidation and media stunts than in genuinely governing with integrity and responsibility. But the situation was about to take a much darker and more alarming turn as tensions between Henyard and Stubbs grew. The conflict escalated to frightening levels. Stubbs recalls an unsettling encounter when Henyard arrived at her property, accompanied by a caravan of police officers and city workers, ringing doorbells and asking her tenants about Stubbs' whereabouts. The entire situation felt, according to Stubbs, as though the mayor was using village resources to pursue a personal vendetta. It was an unnerving and strange encounter that left Stubbs feeling as though the mayor was exploiting her position to track her down. This incident was only the beginning of a series of increasingly disturbing events, suggesting that Henyard was willing to go to great lengths to intimidate or silence her critics. The most shocking of these events was the brazen shooting that took place in July 2023, a chilling attack on Stubbs' property that left at least 9 rounds fired into her cars, damaging them and shattering windows. This attack was anything but random violence, and many viewed it as the culmination of months of growing hostility and threats from Henyard's camp. The shooting was seen as a dark turning point in a very public and heated battle, as the mayor's actions seemed to have crossed a line into violent intimidation. Even more alarming were the strange individuals seen hanging around Stubbs' home in the days leading up to the shooting. Neighbors, speaking anonymously out of fear of reprisal, reported seeing these individuals acting suspiciously near Stubbs' property. And as if things weren't disturbing enough, doorbell camera footage captured 2 men leaving the area shortly after the gunfire erupted. The footage showed them getting into a white car and driving away, behavior that looked eerily like something straight out of a crime scene. These developments raised a troubling question. Could Henyard have been directly responsible for orchestrating the violent attack on Stubbs? Several sources suggested that Henyard may have played a role, pointing to her past use of the police department as a tool to serve her personal agenda. One of the most damning pieces of evidence comes from Robert Collins, the former Dolton police chief, who was fired by Henyard. After his dismissal, Collins came forward with claims about Henyard's mismanagement of police resources. According to Collins, Henyard had been using the police force not to combat crime, but to serve her own interests. At times, she allegedly pulled officers from critical street patrols during periods of understaffing to work on her personal security detail. "We needed those officers fighting crime on the streets," Collins stated. But instead, they were driving around protecting the mayor. These revelations raised the chilling possibility that Henyard could have used her influence over the police to orchestrate the attack on Stubbs, possibly with officers involved in planning or even executing it. The atmosphere of fear and paranoia that Henyard's leadership created in Dolton only fueled these suspicions. According to one resident, Henyard's reign had led to a deep mistrust of local authorities, with residents living in constant anxiety and fear. People began to alert each other about their whereabouts, watching over their shoulders, terrified that any wrong move could trigger retaliation from the mayor or her supporters. As Henyard's grip on the town appeared to tighten, so did the fear among Dolton's residents. They had become prisoners in their own community, unable to trust those who were supposed to protect them, and unsure whether anyone, including the mayor, was above reproach. The situation had escalated beyond a political dispute or a simple clash of egos. It had become a terrifying battle for control of the town, with Stubbs and other critics of Henyard fearing for their safety. The deeper one delves into the situation, the more difficult it becomes to ignore the possibility that Henyard was using her power and influence for much darker purposes than just political gain. Could she have turned from a corrupt leader to a potential criminal? The growing evidence of her misuse of power, combined with the chilling atmosphere of fear in Dolton, paints a disturbing picture of a community under siege. Whether or not Henyard was directly involved in the shooting, it is clear that her behavior has created a climate of intimidation and distrust, with residents left wondering just how far she is willing to go to maintain her control. With each new revelation, the town of Dolton has found itself facing a nightmare. As the allegations continue to mount, the question remains, can the people of Dolton hold Henyard accountable before her tactics and actions destroy the very fabric of their community? The investigation into Henyard's conduct is far from over, but the growing unease in Dolton suggests that the mayor's reign may be coming to a dangerous and explosive climax.
Sometimes we don't get answers to those questions, and so it's not about clickbait.
What started as a politically messy situation in Dolton, Illinois, has rapidly escalated into a full-blown scandal shaking the very foundation of the town. As the latest developments unfold, troubling new allegations have emerged, casting Mayor Tiffany Henyard in an increasingly sinister light. Beyond her well-documented flair for the dramatic, there are now rumors circulating that Henyard may have far deeper, more troubling ties, possibly even to organized crime. While such accusations may initially sound outlandish, the mounting evidence presents a picture that is impossible to ignore. Critics have long argued that Henyard has been ruling Dolton with an iron fist, using her political influence not only to silence her opposition, but also to embrace theatrics in her public life, and disturbingly, possibly on the streets as well. Recent incidents suggest that Henyard's behavior may not just be that of a corrupt politician, but that of someone much more dangerous. Strange individuals have been spotted loitering outside the home of Just Stubbs, a vocal critic of Henyard, while the audacious shooting in July that damaged Stubbs' property, and the suspicious lack of a serious police investigation afterward, point to someone with immense power and a blatant disregard for the law. These actions raise the chilling possibility that Henyard's grip on Dolton goes far beyond typical political maneuvering. As media attention on the scandal grows, more witnesses have come forward, painting a damning portrait of Henyard as a leader who not only embezzles public funds, but resorts to violence and intimidation to maintain her control over the town. Anonymous sources suggest that Henyard may have connections with local gangs, using these ties to eliminate political rivals. Her aggressive policing tactics, critics argue, seem less about controlling crime and more about keeping those who oppose her in check. The state of Dolton's police department under Henyard's leadership raises even more alarms. The department, already beleaguered by mismanagement, is struggling financially, with the town's budget now in the red. The possibility has even emerged that police cruisers could be repossessed due to unpaid bills, an appalling reality for a department already on the brink of collapse. Could Henyard's alleged ties to criminal organizations be contributing to the deliberate undermining of Dolton's law enforcement? The answer may not be as far-fetched as it initially seems. This would ensure that criminal activity, particularly that which benefits Henyard, goes unchecked and unpunished. The growing mistrust among Dolton's residents has reached a breaking point. The bigger question now is what it says about local governance when a mayor reportedly uses her position not only to harass and intimidate, but also possibly to eliminate her political opponents. This entire situation serves as a sobering reminder of how power can corrupt, especially in small communities where oversight is minimal and personal vendettas can endanger public welfare. Henyard's administration, marked by a complete lack of transparency, abuse of authority, and relentless pursuit of personal gain, has transformed Dolton's once promising future into a frightening picture of authoritarian control. Adding to the mounting pressure on Henyard, former allies have begun to abandon her, with the latest blow to her already crumbling reputation coming from Carmen Carlisle, a former close associate who has bravely stepped forward as a whistleblower. Carlisle has accused Henyard of unethical and predatory behavior, adding even more weight to the growing calls for the mayor's resignation. With Carlisle's decision to speak out, Henyard's grip on Dolton appears to be slipping. Even her most devoted supporters are beginning to question her leadership. The walls are closing in, and the pressure for Henyard to step down is mounting. What once seemed like a series of minor controversies has now escalated into a full-scale scandal that threatens to unravel everything Henyard has built. The people of Dolton are left to wonder how their once thriving town fell into such disarray and whether they can ever recover from the damage caused by the very person they trusted to lead them. As the truth behind Henyard's actions continues to unfold, it becomes increasingly clear that the consequences of this scandal could be far-reaching, not only for Dolton but for how power is wielded in small-town politics across the country. The Illinois State Controller has taken the unprecedented step of denying Dolton vital state funding, citing the village's noncompliance with financial reporting laws, a decision directly tied to Henyard's poor financial management. This bold move from the state has intensified the wave of criticism against Henyard, signaling that even state officials are no longer willing to turn a blind eye to her erratic behavior and questionable handling of public funds for Dolton. This financial chokehold could very well signal the end of Henyard's political career. The town is already struggling financially, and losing such essential state support could be devastating. As investigations into Henyard's actions deepen, with federal subpoenas reportedly issued and rumors of an FBI probe circulating, it's becoming clear that the drama surrounding Henyard's leadership is far from over. Residents of Dolton are desperate for answers and demanding accountability and justice. They are left questioning whether their mayor is merely a corrupt politician willing to stop at nothing to silence her critics and maintain control, or if, more alarmingly, she is a criminal mastermind with ties to organized crime, using her political power to further her own interests and carry out unspeakable acts. What once seemed like a series of minor controversies has now morphed into a full-scale scandal. The cracks in Henyard's leadership are finally starting to show, and the pressure on her is mounting. With federal authorities now investigating the situation, the people of Dolton are left wondering how far the investigation will reach and whether Henyard will be held accountable for her alleged misdeeds as the scandal continues to unfold. The stakes have never been higher. Dolton, once a quiet and unassuming town, has now been thrust into the national spotlight. Its residents are watching, waiting, and hoping for answers. Will Henyard be exposed for the corruption that many believe she's guilty of? Or is there something even more sinister at play behind the scenes? The growing uncertainty surrounding Henyard's true intentions has only fueled the community's desire for clarity. As residents of Dolton hope that justice will ultimately prevail, the story of Henyard's troubled tenure continues to unfold. The town remains on edge, knowing that each new revelation may bring them closer to uncovering the full scope of the mayor's actions. With Dolton's future hanging in the balance, the residents are demanding accountability from the mayor they once trusted to lead. The fate of both the town and Henyard herself now rests in the hands of the authorities investigating the scandal, and the people of Dolton are eagerly waiting to see just how far this story will go as the investigation intensifies and more witnesses come forward. The questions only grow louder. What is really going on in Dolton? Is Henyard simply a corrupt politician, or is she something far worse? And most importantly, what will the future hold for Dolton, a town that has already paid a heavy price for its leaders' actions? The truth is slowly emerging, and the answers may be even more shocking than anyone could have ever imagined. Stay tuned as this story continues to unfold. The residents of Dolton, along with the rest of the nation, may be just a few steps away from uncovering the full extent of what has been happening in this small Illinois town. The truth is out there, and it's closer than ever to being revealed.